This is Charter Local Edition. My name is Brad Pomerantz. I'm in the nation's capital today. I'm very excited to introduce you to Blaine Luetkemeyer. He is a member of the United States Congress representing the beautiful state of Missouri, and you represent significant areas that are rural. And as a result, a lot of beauty, rivers and lakes and streams. And so there's been some concern amongst your constituents and others about an EPA effort to redefine what's known as the waters of the United States. Talk to us most generally about it, and then we can get into some specifics.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity, Brad.
Please.
And you know, basically what it is EPA is trying to, by rule, change the law, which, quite frankly, is illegal, but they're trying to do this.
Okay.
And the Clean Water Act says that they should have jurisdiction, EPA should have jurisdiction over navigable waters.
Right. And that's the key.
That's the key. And they want to take, and their rule is that they want to take the word navigable out of the Clean Water Act, which means then they would have jurisdiction over all the waters of the U.S. So as soon as a raindrop would be squeezed out of a cloud, hit the ground, they conceivably would have jurisdiction over that. Now they say, well, we're not going to do that. But in committee, I've asked the question of the number 2 person, EPA. I said, well, I've got a dry creek behind my house. It takes a 5-inch rain to have water run down the creek. But I said, there is a creek there. And I said, would you have jurisdiction over that? He said, well, as long as there's a watermark on the ground, we would have jurisdiction over it. So therefore, a watermark. So therefore, a mud puddle, a pond, any ditch, they would have jurisdiction over. So therefore, we're very concerned about this because the implications would be that anything that would have water on it, in other words, fields, ditches, ponds, rivers, streams, they would have jurisdiction over. This has a tremendous impact, dramatic impact on farmers, and even for instance, city fathers, county officials, from standpoint, they put chemicals and things like that on the roads and streets and parks that they maintain, and even the homeowner, from the standpoint that are you going to have a permit now to fertilize your yard, to put herbicides on your yard? But so
what the EPA says is that what they're trying to do is protect drinking water. So if the stream, for example, in your backyard, the dry creek, fills up and then it flows into a water source that ultimately can be used for drinking, they want to protect that. I'm learning this issue with you. How do you respond?
Well, I think that there are plenty of protections in place already with regards to those sorts of concerns that they have. I don't know how the water in the ditch in front of my house, how the pond on my farm can be something that would be a concern to them from a standpoint of impacting downstream water quality. I think that they really need to be looking at the larger picture of chemical dumps by companies or by other sorts of entities versus the homeowner who has to get a permit to put fertilizer on the yard. I don't know that that really is where they're going with this, but that's how far it could go. And in their own testimony in committee, they said that it could go that far. So that's a concern.
They've also said the reason we're stepping in is because localities are not enforcing laws, they don't have strong enough laws, and this is filling a vacuum. What's your sense?
Well, my sense is that if there already are laws on the books that are not being enforced, that's the problem. Putting more laws on the books and putting EPA in charge, that's not a solution. If we have existing laws on the books that aren't being enforced, then we need to look at those situations on a case-by-case basis. Don't go out and make a whole new set of rules and regulations, put a new bureaucracy in place to try and impact all of the citizens of the U.S. This is not, in my mind, the thing to do.
And what's interesting about this issue is this issue crosses party lines. I mean, there are Democrats that are hopping mad on this. There are Republicans that are hopping mad. So it's not as if this has become an issue where you only have one party up in arms. You have lots of, very mainstream, moderate, senators from both parties that are saying, this doesn't make sense. So what are the group of you doing? What are y'all doing to try to resolve this issue?
Well, there's a bill that we've passed in the House to try and stop this. And basically what the bill says, it just says that EPA is required to withdraw the rule, and then if they want to continue down this path, to do it correctly, because technically they didn't even implement the rule correctly. There is a process in place by which the bureaucracy is supposed to propose rules and get them implemented. They didn't go through the process. So technically, in my mind, this rule is illegal on 2 counts. Number 1, it's a rule trying to change law, which you can't do. That's illegal. And number 2, the rule has proposed itself in an illegal way. And so they need to go back, withdraw the rule, And if they want to continue this, go down the path of doing it correctly, which is to have public hearings, look at the science to see once what problem you're trying to solve and how are you doing it with this rule in a correct way, and look at the cost-benefit analysis of what you're trying to do. Those are things that were not done with this rule initially.
Is this a solution seeking a problem? I'm wondering. I mean, is it a solution seeking a problem? Is there a problem? I don't know.
That to me is the general consensus of many things going on in the bureaucracy today. That we
or in Congress, as you joked.
And so I think that, to me, this is the case. You just pointed out a minute ago that you got some rules and regulations perhaps aren't being enforced.
Right.
Let's go back and do that. Let's enforce those. And if you still have a problem, then come back to us. But again, this proposal was not put in place correctly to let us know, number one, what the problem is and what your solution is based on sound science and what the cost-benefit analysis of this thing would be. And without those things, it's really difficult to put together a good solution to a problem that we really haven't perfectly identified.
So what are your friends in the Senate doing? You said the House has acted. Have your friends in the Senate acted yet?
Well, that's a really big term there when you said friends in the Senate.
Well, I use it in a way just to suggest that we're all
they're colleagues over there, but they certainly sometimes stretch our friendship a little bit. But we're hopeful that they take it up. It's as you pointed out, Brad, it's a bipartisan issue that I think we've got a lot of support on both sides of the aisle. The Senate, it's very difficult to get floor time because of all the different things that go on and the structure of their body over there. So we're hopeful that this gets some floor time. If not, that it gets put onto existing bills somewhere.
I mean, since it's bipartisan, you got to get 60 votes to get anything really handled in the Senate. I mean, they'll have it. When you look at the bipartisan nature of the companion bill.
Right. I think there's an opportunity there. I think that at some point it'll get done.
Is it worth engaging with the administration? Because in the end, this is an administrative action. I mean, is that worth it, or you just got to work through the legislative branch?
Well, I think you'll work through the legislative branch, and then you see where the president's at. I think when you see the overwhelming bipartisan support and all the different groups out there, this isn't liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican. I mean, this is across the spectrum. I think you get that sort of support and put a bill on the desk of the president that has that sort of bipartisan, wide-bodied support. I think you'll go
Sir,
along.
You've also expressed some concern about overreach by a different federal agency, and this is the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Talk to us briefly in our final couple of minutes, I should say, about Operation Choke Point.
Okay, Operation Choke Point was initially a cooperative operation between the Department of Justice and FDIC. And they came up with the name Operation Choke Point because they want to choke off financial services to individual businesses, and in fact went beyond that. They want to go to entire industries, not individual businesses, but entire industries of businesses.
Sounds like a laudable goal that got ahead of itself. Is that fair?
Well, initially it was supposed to be for money laundering, which is laudable. I certainly support their efforts. The problem is they're not doing it for money laundering, they're doing it for everything else. The Oversight and Government Reform Committee has done a very good job of investigating this, got a hold of these departments' own emails and internal memos, and from those we find that in their own words, that they believe that some of these businesses don't have the moral right to exist, that they want to do away with an entire industry. Those are their words. So obviously there is more than just a legality problem here. This is a situation where they're going after legal businesses, doing legal business based on their own value system and their own political bent, and they admit in these emails, there's a discussion within each agency, Department of Justice and FDIC, their own legal departments debate among themselves whether they actually are doing this in a legal way.
So what can Congress do?
Well, what we're trying to do, we talk to them and try to get them to stop the nonsense. We have been able to get the FDIC to put in place new protocols that stop this. But we're going to we also have a bill. I have offered a bill that does this. They took my protocols that I put in my bill and they put it in place. The bill will have a hearing this week. Hopefully it'll be voted out and be moved on. And we've also defunded it in the DOJ bill.
There you have it. He's Blaine Luetkemeyer. He is a member of the U.S. Congress from Missouri. I'm Brad Pomerantz. It's Local Edition.
In what year was the first international free trade agreement reached? 1790, 1860, 1900, or 1920? The first international free trade agreement was finalized in 1860 between the United Kingdom and France.
This is Charter Local Edition. My name is Brad Pomerantz. We are coming to you from Washington, D.C. We are joined by John Shimkus. He is a member of the United States Congress representing the great state of Illinois. But, sir, I want to speak with you about the world, and specifically on Europe. There's been a lot of attention focused on the Middle East, an important issue, no doubt. But I want to focus on what's happening in Eastern Europe, what's happening in the Ukraine, the Crimea, and how it's impacting the former Soviet states. Talk to us about Lithuania, for example, where you recently visited.
Well, what we have to remember is that Lithuania just celebrated its 25th anniversary of reestablishment of freedom. So they've been free, independent of the Soviet Union, or now Russia, for 25 years. In that time, they first became members. Many of these Eastern European countries are now members of NATO, and many are members of the UN. So they really are part of the European community. Depending upon where in the past 25 years, Russia has really not been pleased with this integration into the West. And we see the emergence of that now with, you know, they hold 2 provinces in the country of Georgia. People are watching what's happened in Crimea and then the eastern part of Ukraine.
And let's talk about the Crimea, because in some ways it's mind-blowing what happened. And I'm not taking a position, but literally we're going to read about this in the history books, that one day Russia marched on in and took the Crimea. I mean, look, I understand you look at a map, it kind of looks like it could be part of Russia, but no, I mean, that's not how this works.
Well, but as people follow this stuff, the Istanbul Accords was an agreement by the major powers, and in which Ukraine gave up their nuclear weapons. And both countries, Russia, the United States, agreed to the sovereignty, territorial sovereignty of the country of Ukraine. If they blew right by that.
Now, if I were an elected official in Lithuania, in Latvia, and Estonia, the Baltics, you visited Lithuania, I'd be nervous. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's very fair. Because historically, what we've had air policing in an air base called Chalet in Lithuania, but now we have what we call permanent rotational troops, which is a battalion of U.S. Army cavalry unit that's a company in each country. Now that's great, but it's not nearly. It's more for show, not for go in case there was an invasion. But the Baltics really want to ensure that, you know, that our NATO treaty, Article 5, is an attack on one is an attack on all. That's really the sacred pillar of the NATO alliance.
Ukraine, are they part of NATO?
They are not.
Okay, so that's why the Crimea situation.
That's why the NATO didn't intervene militarily. Georgia is not part of NATO. That's why we didn't intervene militarily. But the Baltics are. So Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are all part of NATO, and even though they should feel comfortable, and even the administration, who I disagree with most of the time, has tried to reassure them that they're being part of NATO, they should be safe and secure. But that's hard to say when you're a small country and you got Russia across the border.
So here's the question then. Since Russia acted aggressively as it relates to Crimea, is it time for the United States and our friends in Europe to talk to what's left of the Ukraine and say, come join NATO?
Well, that's the debate. You just had the G7 meetings. The question is, there's economic sanctions on Russia right now. It is having some impact, but you have in essence, a dictator, and Vladimir Putin, who is really getting emboldened by this show of strength that the Russian Empire is not wilted away, and that he's still a strong leader. So he's, even in adverse times, he's being viewed very positively by the Russian citizens.
What about our friends in Poland? Now, Poland obviously was not part of the Soviet Union, but was part of the sphere of influence of the Soviet Union. Should our friends in Poland be concerned legitimately?
Oh, they're very concerned.
They are.
I mean, you can talk to any really Eastern European, however you want to define Eastern European country, which Poland would fall into that category. They're very concerned. And you know, if I was king for the day, or if I was the president, I would be moving NATO forces as far east as possible. I'm not. So if I was the president, I'd be moving U.S. troops as far east as possible. And I got a leg to stand on in that debate because I was on the West German border. So I served there 3 years against the Soviet Union, and we protected Western Germany from an emerging Soviet threat. That moving forward helped keep the peace, helped to stabilize Western Europe, and now allowed the East to become...
What about that little sliver? Is it called Kaliningrad?
Yeah, that's between Poland and Lithuania. It's an enclave.
It's Russian, correct?
It is Russian.
It seems like a thorn in the side of a lot of us. I mean, why is it there? Because it's not contiguous with Russia. Does it cause problems strategically, militarily, that they have this sliver?
Well, it's kind of like the naval bases in Crimea, because that's where the naval fleet is. They've got chemical weapons. We think they have nuclear weapons. It's no one's laying claim to it, but it is an enclave that Poland and Lithuania have to deal with.
Let's talk about the Middle East, because obviously that continues to be top of mind for Americans in the world. These are times that are baffling. What is ISIS? What is ISIL? It's hard to even describe. But what we do know is they are ravaging Syria, they are ravaging Iraq, they are destroying antiquities, and they are destabilizing the region. The president has recently said, we don't have a clear strategy. I mean, maybe kudos for being honest, but it's a little daunting.
Right. You look at any place in the world, whether it's the Middle East, or you look at Eastern Europe, or you look at now what's going on in the South China Sea, or you look at Iran negotiations. I think the world yearns for leadership. And usually the only country that can really lead the world in these big issues of our time is the United States. And we have a lack of leadership as a chief executive, and he's allowing these risks and these threats to continue to grow without a clear strategy.
So what should we do?
Well, I actually support, when he talked about airstrikes, I was not one who said no. I was one that said yes. But I think we're still war weary, and I think Americans want to see the Arab world obviously address the problems in their backyard. So any way we can help them. I know the Egyptians are trying to formalize an Arab military contingent.
But they're shaky themselves, the Egyptians. I mean, their government, I'm not even sure, can you call it a government?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think what we've learned through this process is that we can't expect everyone to have Jeffersonian democracy now.
And let me ask you about that, because I'm wondering if we in America set ourselves up for disappointment, because we want to, like you say, export the wonder of democracy. Yeah. It's not part of the Middle East ethos.
Yeah, I think hindsight's always 20/20, and I think those of us who served during that time, and served years after, and served now, are questioning some of the positions and stances we took, because you've got to let culture and individual identity. But remember, part of the Middle East problem is because of the lines drawn after World War I by Europeans, and splitting tribes and doing all that stuff.
And that begs the question, we know Yugoslavia was divided up. I mean, should it be we need to divide up Iraq and Syria? And whoever we is, I don't know, but do we need to look at that?
Well, I think this warfare is an attempt to divide it up. So we're living in dangerous times, and hence, we'll have the DOD bill on the floor. We did a DOD authorization bill. And we added money to defense because we don't live in a safer world right now. We live in a more dangerous time.
He is John Shimkus. He is a member of the United States Congress representing the great state of Illinois. My name is Brad Palmer. It's coming to you from Washington, D.C. It's Charter War British.
How many republics comprised the former Soviet Union?
This is Charter Local Edition. My name is Brad Pomerantz in Washington, D.C. Today. We are joined by Marsha Blackburn. She is a member of the United States Congress. And it seems like bipartisanship is breaking out in the halls of Congress. We recently saw that the Republicans and Democrats got together on Medicare reform, dealing with the doctor fix, and now here's another example, 21st century cures.
That's right.
Talk to us about this bill, which kind of brings together a series of initiatives together.
It does bring together a series of initiatives, and it's all focused on patient-centered health care and more positive outcomes for those patients. And this is what we did at Energy and Commerce Committee and our Healthcare Subcommittee. What we did was to look at what was happening in healthcare and look at what are the inhibitors to innovation. And there were a few things that we found out. Nothing was partisan, and you could look.
How? How did that happen? That
because we were talking to constituents. And what we heard, regardless of whether someone was Democrat or Republican, was, you know what, the FDA, they really need to be reformed because they are a barrier to entry for new pharmaceuticals and therapies and innovations. You know, the NIH, we can't get them to look at rare diseases. Hey, what we're hearing from our pediatric research is that the NIH is not involving pediatric patients in much of this process. You know, there's this whole new category of medical technology out here and apps, and the FDA wants to look at these mobile health apps, mHealth apps, as medical devices, but guess what? They're not.
They're not.
So we were hearing all of these things, and we said, you know what, let's solve some of these problems. So we agreed that yes, the FDA needed reform, the NIH needed a refocus, and we needed to modernize the way innovation was coming to the marketplace. And we have a history of doing that. When you look at what happened in the 30s, we classified what is a drug and a pharmaceutical. The 70s, we did medical devices. Lots of people now, hips and knees, you know, hearts, implants, etc. So we said, okay, in the early 2000s, let's go on and classify what is health technology and say, FDA, you can go here in health technology, high-risk things like implants, but no, all of these mHealth apps, there are 97,000 in the marketplace now.
I did not know that.
97,000.
Wow.
You can't get into monitoring Fitbits and calorie counters and blood pressure measurements and all of these things that are enablers to people taking control of their health care. So there was bipartisan agreement on that, and the Software Act, which handles medical technology. Congressman Gene Green has been my partner in working on that for 3 years, believe it or not, and we're finally getting to the point that we have legislation, and it is also a part of 21st century cures.
What about this whole notion of right to try, like you described, these orphan diseases where there's not a lot of research because there's not a lot of people inflicted, and so the drug companies aren't really looking to develop cures. But if someone wants to at least give it a shot, is that part of 21st century cures?
That is not a part of 21st century cures, but the right to try initiative is moving primarily at the states. And Tennessee is one of those states that took that up and allowed that. Now, backing up a bit, it's not that the biotherapies or the pharmaceutical companies don't want to innovate in that space. It is just that they're rare, and you're going to spend $1 billion to bring a drug, and if the FDA will not allow, then you have a barrier to entry. But here's what's happening in medicine as a whole. We have a movement toward precision medicine and personalized medicine. And that is the wave of the future.
It's a miracle.
And it is. As the doctors are able to make a diagnosis, then that treatment is going to be more specialized and specific to that person for their makeup of their body, for their age, for their weight, for their amount of resistance.
And is 21st century cures looking at protections for that information? Because if all of a sudden that information leaks out, you're maybe at more high risk for this, it could impact you later on.
Exactly, and that is going to drive another debate which will be secondary to all of this, and secondary also to the data security legislation that Congressman Welch and I are moving through. And that is your health information and who owns that health information. So many individuals are now saying, look, I don't want the insurance company or the doctor owning that information. When you talk about all the information about you, everything that is online, that is your virtual presence. I call it the virtual you.
Literally.
Yes. And you want to make certain that you're the one that's the keeper of the keys on that information, and you control who has access to it, whether it's a read-only file, a one-time use, but you do not want the physician or the insurance company or anybody else capturing and holding that but you, and then you allow the use.
And you speak about having that information online. As you know, Charter Communications is part of an industry that delivers internet services. We have many partners, Comcast and others, and there's been a very significant debate about what has been called net neutrality. That's the term that is used in the vernacular.
A misnomer.
Okay, so I understand that you have been a strong advocate for a certain position as it relates to what I'll call net neutrality. What can you tell us?
That's exactly right. Net neutrality is a misnomer. It is a net not so neutral, and basically it's the fairness doctrine for the internet. Here's what this Federal Communications Commission is doing with net neutrality. They are taking the internet, which has been an information service, and governments had a hands-off. You know, we came up with the internet, let's go in here and let's make certain that we keep our hands off of it, let innovation take place. Now, Chairman Wheeler and this activist FCC has decided, okay, we're going to reclassify it as a telecommunications service, subject it to rules that were put in place in 1938, and then we're going to tax it and regulate it. What this does is allow the FCC to assign priority and value to content. Very much opposed to net neutrality. I have the Internet Freedom Act. I've been joined by many members of Congress. There's bipartisan opposition to what they're trying to do with the FCC.
And I think there's some confusion on this very issue. This doesn't have to do with sales tax for products you may buy on the internet.
No.
That's a separate issue that's already been handled. This has to do with the alleged somehow...
Take your telephone bill and look at your telephone bill and your cable bill, and you see all of, you're paying for your tier of service, and then you get into this list of taxes, which is 5 or 6 different little fees and taxes, and you're going, what is this for? That's what they're wanting to do now to your internet service. So in addition to your telephone service and to your cable service, your internet service, which has just been the access for what you wanted.
That's the key.
That now you're going to have a list of taxes that will be there.
So what can you tell us about the success or potential success of the Internet Freedom Act? Because we know, like you said, the FCC has ruled legislation can come down, but it could be in the courts, it is in the courts. What can you tell us?
What I can tell you is that we are continuing to fight it. The courts have already ruled against the FCC. And that was done 3 years ago when we filed the Internet Freedom Act. What we will do is, through the appropriations process, block the FCC from spending some of the money that is used to implement net neutrality rules. And we also will block their push to give away control of the internet with ICANN and with IANA.
Her name is Marsha Blackburn. She is a member of the U.S. Congress representing the state of Tennessee. My name is Brad Pomerantz. You are watching Charter Local Edition.